The endowment effect is a psychological defect in our brains that leads us to make bad decisions with our money. In this video, I'm going to explain why it happens, how marketers use it against you, and how to overcome its negative impacts on your daily spending and investment decisions. If you're new here, I'm Ethan with Fundamentals of Finance. I'm a CFA charter holder, investment professional, and a huge nerd. And I'd like to welcome you to the next video in our series on the psychology of money, where you'll learn how to make better everyday spending decisions and develop the mindset of a great investor. Let's dive into the endowment effect. A while back, some researchers did an experiment where one group of people was asked how much they would be willing to pay for a mug. Then, another group of people was given the mug and asked how much they would be willing to sell it for. Something interesting happened. The sellers wanted about twice as much money to sell it as the buyers were willing to pay for it. But why? It's not like one group of people needed a mug more than the other. Both groups were basically being asked the same question: how much the mug is worth. But the people who already had it gave it a much higher value. The reason our brains do that is that we actually form emotional connections between our sense of self and the things that we consider to be ours. This starts at a young age. Scientists did a study where they told 3 to 6 year olds that they'd created a machine that could create an exact replica of anything. When asked to choose between their favorite toy and an exact replica of it, most of them chose the original. Actually, a lot of them hated the idea of replacing it with an exact replica. That may sound childish when talking about a kid and their favorite toy, but this isn't something that we grow out of. It just evolves as we get older. You have clothes in your closet that you'll probably never wear again? I know I do. If you saw them in a store today, would you buy them? I know I wouldn't. So then why do we still have them? Because once we have something, we irrationally assign a higher value to it in our minds than we would if we didn't have it. That's the endowment effect in a nutshell. We all experience this to differing degrees, and at the extreme end, you get the people who end up on hoarders. Thankfully, most of us don't experience the endowment effect that badly, but we're all vulnerable to it. That brings us to section 2: how marketers use it against you. Have you ever taken a second to think about why mattress companies always offer refunds even after you've slept on the mattress for a few months? Why would they do that? No one wants to buy an old used mattress. Well, they do it because they know that in reality, most people are never going to return the mattress, even if they don't really like it. They're using the endowment effect on you. Once we have the mattress at our house, we want it more than we did before we had it. Even if we don't really like it, we justify keeping it in our minds. Oh, returning it would be such a hassle, and I don't have time to shop for another one. Oh, I'm sure it'll be better once it breaks in. We'll find a way to convince ourselves that we should keep it, even if we really know that we shouldn't. Once we have it, we develop that emotional attachment to it. And often, that actually even happens before we buy something. Going back to our mug example, if you let the buyers hold the mug, even if you don't tell them that it's theirs, they're willing to pay a lot more for it, almost the same amount as the people who owned it were willing to sell it for. We start developing that emotional attachment almost immediately, and marketers frequently use this against us. It's not just mattress companies with their money back guarantees. This is the reason behind fitting rooms, free samples, free trials, and test drives too. For a real life example, I met someone last week that had a puppy golden retriever. She said she'd made an appointment just to go meet the puppies, but didn't actually intend to get one yet because she wasn't ready. You can see where this is going. Of course, she developed an attachment instantly. I mean, how could you not? Then, when the sellers told her that she didn't have much time left to reserve one before they were going to be gone, she went right to the bank to get the money for a deposit. She allowed herself to be taken in by the endowment effect, which put her in a vulnerable position, and she ended up making a big purchase that she wasn't ready for. Granted, a big, very cute purchase that'll bring her lots of joy. Still, In order to avoid the endowment effect in our everyday money decisions, it's best to do your research and come in as a really informed buyer. That way, you're less likely to be swayed by the experience of physically having something in your hands. And you're less likely to buy things that you don't really want. Shopping online is also really helpful. Have you ever gone into the grocery store for one thing and ended up with a whole shopping cart? That never happens to me because I keep a running list of things I need on my Notepad app. And then when I go into the store, I just get those things. Well, for the most part. When it comes to investing, the main way the endowment effect hurts us is by causing us to hold on to investments longer than we should. Owning an investment, especially if it was inherited from a loved one who passed away, it distorts our perception of its value and makes it really hard to sell, even when there's tons of evidence that we should. Remember the GameStop saga in 2021? Retail investors banded together to push GameStop's stock price, quote, to the moon, which you can see in that top chart. The bottom chart is Google search activity for the term HODL, HODL, in the same time frame. HODL means hold on for dear life, aka never sell no matter what. The term first peaked right when the stock peaked, right before it lost almost 90% of its value in the next few weeks. Even if people did hold on for dear life until the next time the HODL search has peaked, it never reached its prior high again, and now it's down massively from where it was. The moral of the story here is that there is no such thing as a stock that you should hold on to for dear life and never sell. Everything has its price. Emotional attachments pretty much never work out in the stock market. Besides meme stocks, two other places that these often come into play is with inheritances and company stock. I think it's safe to say that when people pass down shares of stock to you, they're intending on you to be able to use the money, not be forced to hold on to some digital ticker forever. If it makes sense to sell, then sell. When you own a lot of company stock, it can get even more dangerous. Just ask the people at Enron, which went bankrupt in 2021. If you have a lot of your investments locked up in your company's stock, then if something bad happens to your company, you can lose a lot of money on your investments and lose your job at the same time. That's a risk that just doesn't make sense to take, no matter how much you like your company or believe in its future. And don't get me wrong, if you get stock options or have a stock purchase plan that lets you buy discounted shares, that's often a good deal, and I'm definitely not saying you shouldn't take advantage of it. But it usually makes sense to sell at least some of the shares and diversify into something else once you can do it without a penalty. An extreme example of the endowment risk is in the Iraqi dinar scam. About a year ago, I did a whole bunch of videos on this scam and went on a mission to try to stop it. Basically, the premise of the scam is that the currency of Iraq is going to magically go up 3,000x overnight and make people rich, which is obviously impossible. Since it's not a widely traded currency, the fees to buy and sell are often 40+%. So as soon as you invest, you've lost a significant chunk of your money that you're highly unlikely to ever get back. But here's where the endowment effect comes in. The people who promote the scam always say the magical, quote, revaluation is going to happen right around the corner. It's always next week. Now, a rational person would hear those false promises a few times and think, maybe this person doesn't know what they're talking about. But instead, these people become obsessed. They develop wild delusions about the value of the Iraqi dinar because they simply cannot admit that they bought something that's mostly worthless. Just last week, someone told me that the US government was going to purposefully dump the dollar and leave all of its citizens in poverty so that they could enrich themselves on all the Iraqi dinars that they secretly own. Then he told me the dinar must be worth more than the dollar because it has more watermarks. You can't make this stuff up. Some hoarders and people that have been caught up in scams may be beyond saving. But for the other 99.9% of you, here's my two-step process for overcoming the endowment effect on your investments. Step one, if you have an investment and you're thinking about what you should do with it, Imagine you were building your portfolio from scratch today. Would you buy the same amount that you currently own? It's not, and it's probably time to sell. Step two depends on whether you've got a big loss or a big gain. Either way, the endowment effect can make it hard to think clearly about what we should do. So here's how I mentally overcome that when I either have a big loss or a big gain. If I have a position with a big gain, I first ask myself the question from step one. If I were building my portfolio from scratch today, would I buy this much? And if the answer is no, but I'm still really positive on the investment for the long run, then I'll just sell a piece of it, maybe a quarter or a half of my position to start. Then, if I sold too soon and it keeps going up, I still emotionally feel like I'm winning because I still own some. And then I'll likely sell the rest of the position down the road at a bigger gain. If I time it well and it goes down, I'll emotionally feel good that I sold some of my position around the time. This isn't a way to guarantee perfect timing. Actually, it's a way to guarantee you won't have perfect timing because you're going to sell only part of your position at once. It's just a way to overcome the endowment effect that would stop me from making the most logical, rational decision. The key here is that I'm starting from a point where I've decided the investment is too big as a percentage of my portfolio, either because my conviction isn't as high as it once was, or it's just getting too risky to have so much in one thing. If I don't decide it's too big, then I won't sell any. But if I do, this is a way I overcome the mental barrier to selling my winning positions. And historically, this strategy has paid off pretty well for me. When I have a big loss, I often don't want to sell, especially if my long term thesis is still intact. But I know that my brain, well, all of our brains, have a tendency to focus more on the positive in these scenarios. We also hate taking losses, which is something we'll talk about more in our next video. But you know another thing we hate doing? Paying taxes. And if you sell something at a loss, you get to pay fewer taxes. So if I run the first test and I would not want to buy the investment today with fresh money, then that's a sign I should sell it. I take the tax loss and call it a moral victory. Then, after a month has gone by, I'll think about it as a real fresh money idea. Usually, I find that I still don't want to buy it back, but I can if I want to. If you found this video helpful, please hit those like and subscribe buttons and stick around for the rest of the series on the psychology of money. And if you have questions or want to continue the investing conversation, check out the link in the description where you can join our free Discord. Kyle and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.